Boom. And we are live. What's going on, y'all? General Moses in the building. Welcome to another episode of Dream Chasers, where hustle meets house. And yes, our show is sponsored by the one and only House of Hustle. You go to houseofhustleltd.com for more information. Today, we are joined by a legend of the game. I know I like to, anyone who comes on my show, Graham, I'm sure you can relate to some degree. Anyone you bring it on is a legend, right? Like that's the mindset you have to have as a podcast host. But I really feel like we're going to get some legendary insight, entertainment, all that good stuff here today. We've got Grahame Farmer of data transmission in the building. And I was telling Graham before we hit record, this is a surreal moment for me because I've really been a fan of his work for my, very long 3 years in this industry at most. But he's been someone who's been there as a resource for thousands of people, including myself, through just the work that he's doing to help aspiring artists get to that next level. So I'm sure we're going to talk about some of that stuff here today, Graham. But before I continue to be starstruck, I just want to kick it over to you. And if you could just let our audience know a little bit about your background and your story, and we'll go from there.
Hey, thank you. Oh, so nice to hear. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. Hey, I'm Grahame. I run a website called Data Transmission. I've done that for 17 years now. And it's becoming an adult. In the UK, you can learn to drive at 17. So data transmission is learning to drive now, which is exciting. It's out there on the roads, scary a little bit. But yeah, so I've run that website. Essentially, it started as a website. Before I run data transmission, I used to work at a nightclub in London called Turnmills, and it was one of the biggest clubs in the country back then. Like we literally got to book everyone we wanted to. Like I didn't go into another club for I think I worked there for 4 or 5 years, and I didn't go to another club because I didn't need to. Because if we wanted to seek somebody, we just booked them. Like we had the first ever gigs for Swedish House Mafia. We paid them 200 quid
Wow.
to play in the back room as well. Like literally, their first UK gig. We had the first UK gig for Eric
What
Prydz.
year would that have been?
I started at the club maybe 2003, so
Okay.
around then, yeah. Justice, like they played at the club for the first ever time. That's their first ever UK gig. So like we had first gigs for so many people. Like Eric Prydz, we had to he wouldn't fly back then, and we had to get him on a boat to come and play in the UK. It was there's so many mental stories from that club that it was just. I learned a lot. I've got a lot of friends from that club. Like I still work with lots of people from that club today, and who are still in the industry today, and we kind of help each other. And and then when that club closed, it was like, what are we going to do now? So data transmission was always part of the club. It was like it was part of the flyers and part of the promotion, and we just took it online. And I've run it since then, basically. And it was started as a blog and a website. And yeah, we've had some amazing times. I had the first ever our first ever London live show for Totally Enormous Six Ink Dinosaur. I booked Disclosure for one of their first ever shows, and they were third on the bill, and we turned away 2,500 people at the door. But also, aside from that, we've talked about so many artists first. I remember I met Solado, and essentially they came and met me, and they literally before they'd even released a track, and they gave me this USB of 10 tracks. And they were like, "Can you support us?" And we literally were the first people to write about them because I was fully into the music. I dropped one of their tracks as a premiere. I was listening to it the other day. Actually, it was mental. And all those names, there's been so many names across the years that I was probably one of the first people to write about John Summit. I was probably one of the first people to write about people like Alicia. And I know Shelley, my other half, who runs all the drum and bass in Jungle. She was one of the first people to write about some of the biggest, upcoming drum and bass artists now that are out now. Like we've been covering Chasing Status, for instance, for since we started since Data Transmission. And there's a video on my YouTube where we interviewed Chasing Status back in 2008. So we've been kind of covering lots of these big artists that are now industry names that from the minute they start, because we just kind of keep our ears to the ground. We kind of follow what people are doing, and I look on the lineups at who's on room 3 on the flyer, playing in room 3, because in 5 years' time they could be headliners, and I kind of get them on mix series and start premiering their music and start supporting them with the platform, and then we just kind of keep working with them over time, and then essentially become big fans of these people. And now we have a radio station, which is 170 people hosting shows with us. We have, four record labels, which is about to be 5 record labels from in about 2 weeks' time. We're launching a disco label called Disco Infiltrators, which is a SoundCloud. Basically, all of our record labels have started as SoundCloud pages. I started on SoundCloud 10 years ago, and maybe longer. 2010, I started on SoundCloud. Sorry. And I built my main page to nearly 190,000 followers. We've done maybe 150 million streams on that channel. And from there, we kind of build other SoundClouds off of it. And all of these, like 63B, our record label, and Disco Infiltrators, our new label, start as SoundCloud pages and they turn into record labels. And we kind of test the waters a little bit and it turns into a label and then essentially build out the brand from there. So that's what Disco Infiltrators is coming up in. That's was a page, and now it's going to be becoming a label. Exciting, yeah. And then from there, like I've started on artist development. I started working on artist development 10 years ago. I started working with a young DJ back then. He was really young. Like he used to come around my flat with his dad, and essentially we'd kind of talk about his music, listen to his demos. I'd send his tracks out to some artists and get some feedback and help him with his social media platform. And, that was young Ben Sterling back then. And we were like, from there, I learned so much working with him and his family, and it helped him get some music signed to Hot Creations. And from there, kind of, he went off on his way. And, after that, like, there was this mad, like, moment of like, shit, if he's needed this help, then others must need the similar help. There must be other artists in the same space. And, I learned all this stuff from working with him. I didn't even know, like, when you work with people and you're like, I didn't know I knew that. I didn't know I knew how to do that. Like, and you realize that there's sort of self-realization of that. You go, other people must need it. And B, I didn't know knew how to do that. Oh, that's quite cool. And because I worked with him, like I learned all that from him, and I'm forever, forever grateful for having that time and learning what I didn't even know I knew. Which now basically covers everything on my YouTube. Like it covers everything on a course that I've built and all the artists I've worked with thousands of artists now, across all of the platforms to help them with their artist development. And that's me basically.
Yes, you have. I know at least one of them, and I think he's actually pretty close there on your team, is a good friend of mine now. And you'll want to talk about probably a little bit about your relationship with the one and only Los Seca in a moment. But before I forget, because if you're listening on audio right now, go find the video version of the interview. But Grahame is wearing this awesome bright, or it's kind of royal blue shirt. Yeah. So he does have some big news. I just want to make sure we address the big news and we kind of sprinkle that throughout this interview as well.
Oh yeah, I've written a book. I've got them here. Like I've got a paperback and I've got a hardback. I've written a book. Like I'm so excited. Like I started this process maybe 9 months ago. And if you don't know, I have a YouTube channel. It's got maybe 46,000 followers. I make a YouTube video every week on social media on how to grow on Instagram, how to grow on SoundCloud, how to get your demos signed, how to build your strategy, kind of how to stream on Twitch, how to build a YouTube channel as a DJ, and all the kind of business side of, being an artist. Basically, I always think there's like, you learn to DJ, you learn to make music, and that's kind of like, for me, that's literally 10% of the process. And the other 90% is everything else. And that's the everything else that I teach. And those videos I write every week. I spend 2 or 3 days writing a script for. And so every video, there's a script, and every piece of short form content, there's a script. So last summer, I was like, I've got literally hundreds of scripts. I've got literally thousands of pieces of short form content. I've been on so many podcasts where now AI can basically give me the transcription for the podcast and tell me everything that was said in the podcast and give me who said what in the podcast. I've always wanted to write a book. And I've seen some of my favorite creators on YouTube drop books, and I always think of a book like an album. Like when you, as an artist, you drop an album, like you don't just drop albums. You kind of build up to it in singles. You build up to it and you release a load of music, and then you release you kind of get a feel for you building an audience. You understand how to promote to that audience. You build your sound, you build what you're about, you kind of build your story. And then you drop your album, and then it becomes like the body of work. And I always think a book as the same thing. Like, so it's kind of been a long time of making scripts. And then last time I was like, well, I've got all these scripts. Let's see if I can get it into some formalized ideas. It's called Gather, Give and Grow, for those that can't see my t-shirt and listen to the audience. And it's around this kind of 3G strategy for Instagram. I've kind of built a strategy, which is quite funny. Do you know that there's a book called Steal Like an Artist? It's a famous book. And it's kind of the whole concept is like everything is stolen from another artist. Everyone steals from another artist. And essentially everything is referencing. Like even when you're making music, you reference, right? You grab your reference track and you start with the idea of a reference track and you start making a track around someone else's music. And then it's never going to come out the same because you're not going to have the same ideas. You're not going to have the same tools. You're not going to have, the same samples or whatever, right? So you end up with a completely different track, even though you've taken this reference track and the points of the reference track to make your music. And that's essentially the concept of Steal Like an Artist. And then I was scrolling on Instagram and there was someone and they were like, oh, this is my 3E strategy for Instagram. And I was like, well, I like that idea. I like the kind of 3. I like the kind of, but my name begins with a G and I'm not an E. And I want to, like, what's G? And then I started thinking about this 3 Gs. And then basically, it turned into this whole strategy, which has now turned into a book, And
if somebody hires you, then it is 4G. They get all Gather, Give It, Grow, and then they get Grahame.
Yeah, right. Right. So I've written this book, which it's like, I tell you, anything like when you make an album or you make a piece of music, when you make an album, I'm sure you'll go back and forth and, oh my God, I'm going back and forth and back and forth. I'm using the Amazon print on demand, system, which is really, really good for anyone that wants to write a book. Like, but just I can tell you with this version that I've got in my hand here, this is not the final version. It's a proof because you can get proofs printed, which is really cool. But I can tell you, just looking at the cover and the back and kind of looking at the pages, I can see about 1,000 things that I know are wrong with it, like you would have with any with any piece of music. And I've addressed a load of those in the proof that's just arrived in the house. That then looks a little bit better. And I've got till the 23rd to kind of get through, like, all these little tweaks and changes, and even things like where you want stuff to land as you turn the page. Like, where do I want that to come on as you're turning? All of that is a headache, but it's been a fun headache.
Yeah. And for you to get it done in 9 months, I mean, that's especially given your body of work that you were going off of to write this book. It's super, super impressive to get it done that fast, just because, to your point, I know people who have written books or, even when it comes to creative process with music, where they get bogged down on making sure that everything is at 100%, which, you always want to put your best foot forward. But I think anything created as humans, naturally, when we go back to that thing that we did in the past, we can kind of see the little areas and things that we wish we had done or tweaked or whatever, but you kind of just got to be at peace with yourself and know that, I don't know if you know who Cameron Harold is a kind of famous marketing coach, but he just talks about how getting Bs from like a grading perspective, getting Bs and producing consistent Bs is really what creates momentum. If you're someone who's going to strive over perfection, you're really going to slow yourself down.
Perfection's a myth. Yeah. Like, I literally told someone this in a WhatsApp chat earlier. Perfection's a myth. Like, nothing is perfect. Nothing is done. Better finished is, like, as soon as it's ready to go, it's ready to go, because the next thing's going to be better, and the next thing's going to be better than that, and the next thing's going to be better than that. So just get it out there. Let the audience decide let the world decide whether it's good or bad. You'll get feedback from it in both directions. Be prepared to take it and be prepared to kind of take it on your shoulders. And just learn from it. Like, literally learn, iterate. I do this all the time. Like, I'll put stuff out, see what it goes. Sometimes it's rubbish. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's, like, I've changed my content strategy this year, and I've kind of moved to a different strategy of kind of really talking about putting more meat into the content. And the first few videos were like terrible views, terrible reach. And I'm like, it's not the strategy, because I know the strategy works. It means it's the content, and the content's not good enough because it's not doing what I want it to do. So therefore I need to rewrite. I'm not going to ditch the strategy because I know it's the one that's going to work. I need to make the content better. and this is the first version. It's the baseline basically, and everything needs to go better from there basically.
Yeah. Going back to something you said much earlier in the interview, which was your exposure to some of these big names when they were at more of a beginning level, like the story you shared about Solardo is crazy. I'm just curious now. I mean, looking back on the last 17 years, I feel like there's got to be little characteristics and trends and traits that you observed with these individuals specifically who, once they quote unquote made it big, you look back and you said to yourself, you know what, I knew they were going to do that. And I'm sure you've met people who you don't feel that way about. So aside from some of these individuals having like the intangibles of just like not quitting or, what like kind of the common stuff, is there anything that you feel like you've noticed from some of these bigger names, like a quality that they have or something that they do that is different than just your average kind of, entry level starter?
Yeah, the biggest one, and you can watch this now with James Hype. You can actually watch this now with James Hype. Like James Hype is obviously massive right now, and the amount of hate that man gets on social media is absolutely hilarious. Firstly, I see people that get so wound up by him and so wound up by what he does, or like so wound up by his hooks, which are absolutely killer, by the way. Like no one's done this before. Well, of course they have, but you're hooked because you go, well, what have they not done? And then as soon as you go, what have you not done? You're hooked and you want to see what happens. And then whether you like it or not, you're already in there, and then you're going to make a response to it. So it's absolutely genius. But then you see people get so wound up by it and so upset, and they're posting on social media about James Hype, and they're writing his name on social media, which means the social media platforms are going to go, well, this person must like James Hype. They're talking about James Hype. Let's show them more James Hype content because they must like him.
It's the Trump effect, right?
And they're basically getting more of the stuff they actually hate. Now, they're so, and this is DJs and producers as well. They're so worried about what James Hype's doing, what James Hype's doing, and they're commenting on James Hype, and they're spending all of this energy and time, like literally, like they could be doing anything better. They could be making music. They could be working on their own. What's James Hype doing? James Hype's being James Hype. James Hype is making new content. He's working on his tour. He made a blooming live show called Sync, which I think, again, is absolute jokes because all of the haters are sharing his thing that he's called Sync because it's called Sync, but they're sharing it to their audience, and their audience are going to go, some of their audience are going to go, well, who's this? It looks quite cool. And then they're going to become fans because a hater shared it and gone, look at this rubbish. But then their fans are going to, some of their friends are going to go, well, I think it looks quite cool. And he's getting new fans because he's taking the piss, basically. But he's so focused on being James Hype and what his next move is, what his next record is, making his music, what his content is, how good his hooks are, what's working, what's not working. He hasn't got time for any of the hate and bullshit and kind of talking about somebody else because he's too busy doing James Hype. And that's the biggest thing you see with the biggest 1% of artists. They don't give a monkeys about what anyone else is doing. They're too busy doing them. And they're so focused on doing them. That's the thing with Solardo. They literally, they turned up with this music. They'd had 10 tracks, 15 tracks ready to go because they'd put the graft in before they even turned up. And then they went for it. And then they kept investing in themselves. They kept reinvesting in themselves. Any money they were making, they were investing into growing at the time, Facebook was a big thing. They hammered the Facebook growth across all these places, in the places where you could really grow numbers for small amounts of money. At the time, it was kind of Mexico and those sort of countries. You could really grow a big number. So they had massive social proof. And that's what the strategy worked at that time. And then now it's kind of it's an Instagram, it's a TikTok, or it's a YouTube strategy that works a little bit better than a Facebook strategy. But, depending on who you're trying to target. But they're too busy being Solardo or too busy being James Hype to worry about what anyone else is getting on with, what anyone else, all the hate. Yes, they're going to get it in their DMs. Yes, they're going to get it in their comments. But most of the time, I'm guessing they'll block it. Most of the time, they'll get you. It's not going to be nice getting that sort of hate. Block, delete, try not to get wound up by it and just get on with it. especially like you look at James, like he must be just laughing every time someone talks about him and shares his stuff. He must be just pissing himself because it's like another person has shared me to their fan base that potentially I could nick another 5-10 fans from, because their fan base might go, actually, that looks quite cool.
Yeah.
I'll go and watch that.
So the big takeaway there, and I think this would really be, you could apply this to any vertical within the industry, or you could even say within business. But if you just focus on you, in a non-selfish way, but focus on you, focus on what your next moves are, and just being yourself, not trying to be someone else. We hear this stuff all the time, right, guys? But like, I think to hear it from Graham right now, it hits different. You just can't go wrong with that. Go ahead.
That's the one. I done it as well. I did it along through my career, and I did it a lot myself. I loved a lot of the other websites and blogs back in the time, and I would look at theirs and I'd look at what they're doing and look at their content and go, I want to be as big as them. And then as soon as I stopped looking at anyone else and just went, I'm doing me, I'm going to find great music, I'm going to upload it every day, and that's my strategy. The next big thing as well that the big artists will do is you start working further in advance. Like if you think some of these massive artists, they're working not on 2 months in advance, they're working years in advance. They're thinking 3 years in advance. I'm doing this year, I'm doing this year, and I'm doing by that third year, I'll have done all these things that I'm going to be doing this much bigger thing. And you're working 12, 18, 2 years in advance. And that's where I'm going, my next moves. A lot of small artists will work, I've got a track finished, I want it out. Well, when you do that, all
I'm
that
laughing
happens,
because it's true, and I've been there.
right, all that happens when you release one track, you go up a little bit, and then you've got nothing to back it up with, and nothing to next, and nothing next at all. And all of that momentum you get, whatever it is, whether it's radio plays, whether it's Spotify playlists, whether it's Beatport number, whatever, it's gone. And people, if you're not following up with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, it's forgotten about. Someone else is making the moves and someone else is doing it. When you see people say, people say on social media, oh, so and so is blowing up right now, or you're blowing up right now, it's not they're really blowing up. They're just being really consistent.
Yeah.
They've got like I was talking to, or you mentioned Loz Secker, my assistant, like we were talking the other day. He's got releases. I'm super excited for what he's doing. Like he essentially does my video editing and helps me with my live streams. And like we've been working together now 4 years. And
he's the reason, and I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be an artist getting signed with you guys, because I've had a great experience so far. But he was the connection, for us getting that record with you guys.
And we were talking the other day, like he's got a release coming out next week. He's got a release coming out. So where are we now? We're March. He's got one in April. He's got one in May. He's got nothing in June. He's got something in July. He's got a Hustle Radio episode dropping soon. House of Hustle, get ready. Loz Secker will be on Hustle Radio. Sorry, keep going, Graham. There you go. He's got one I think for September. So we've got these two gaps, which are like June and August. And I'm like, well, if you're thinking now March, you're maybe not going to get something signed to the right size label for him for June, because the stuff he's been signing now is maybe September, October. So it's about what can we fill that strategy with? Can we think about a free download release that comes maybe in June? But we're going to have to start. We're going to have to start thinking about this now, because you're going to want to finish it. You're going to make it. I know for a fact you've got a really cool gig coming in April, which if you've got it finished, you've got it mastered, you've got it happy with it by the end of April, then you can play it in that gig in April, which then you can make that content in April, which then you can batch and save for June for your release in June. But if you don't start thinking about it now, that process is not going to happen. And he's then kind of moved that to the next of his priorities list, And that's what I'm saying, like thinking that further in advance. Like and again, like we've got this other free download. You've got some really good gigs coming through the summer. Is that finished? Is it mastered? Because you want to again start playing that and getting that into your sets and into stuff that's happening, because you want to build that over these between now and the end of September, that maybe you then drop at the end of September as another thing that's kind of cool, because it's going to be it's quite a good free download. It's got a really big sample in it. You're never going to get it cleared. But to drop it and kind of give it away, and that kind of really just makes you look cool. It makes you kind of it's it's going to build the numbers really well, and it's going to keep that momentum going through every month this year. And then by then you're thinking, right, I've got those 2 free downloads slotted in, and that's a release schedule then till till September. And then all of a sudden it's like, right, I've got a bit of breathing room. I need maybe 2 more tracks signed in the next couple of months for the end of the year, and then I'm working on next year. Because you don't release in December, it's a bit rubbish.
Well, that's something I learned from you, and one thing I know I'm already going to take from this interview is it's funny because you start seeing success, you start feeling good about yourself, and for me right now, I mean, I'm producing at an all-time high, and I've got kind of something lined up, I think, for the next, to the point you were saying there, like the next 3, 4, 5 months, but I haven't really been putting on my 2 to 3 year cap yet. So I'm totally taking that from you on this one. And one thing that helped me last year, from like a recharge perspective, is I remember hearing you on an interview or something say, nothing happens in December. And shout out to anyone out there who wants to do something in December, because I'm sure you could prove this wrong. But I was like, I thought to myself, you know what? I remember Grahame Farmer said it's okay to like not kill yourself from a work perspective in December. So that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. And it was nice when I came back in January. I felt like it just, it's like, it's a new year. Here we go. Like, I'm ready.
On it, you're right. It's like anyone that releases in December and has success, please, honestly, DM me on Instagram in January. Like next January 26th, if you had a big release or you had something great happen from you got signed in December, there are good things that can happen in December, because you've got some big things that happen in December. That I can tell you that for a fact. You have end of year stuff that happens. So if you've worked well all year, you'll have stuff to shout about that you've had success. That always happens in December. You also have this massive event at the end of December where if you drop the right music, you can kind of get a really big play and to a really big crowd at a really big moment at the end of the year, which then can kind of propel you into the next year, So there are things that can happen in December, but trying to get music signed in December is tough because people just like literally, you've got a week maybe at the beginning of December, then you go into kind of Christmas party mode and people kind of just like literally skate through that week. And then and then from there, the industry shuts down for the last 2 weeks and you're, back in January. From a charts and radio perspective, like Spotify goes on Christmas break, Beatport goes on Christmas break. So you can't get any editorial placements or any kind of support from them. Like, if you're thinking kind of radio and publicity side, if like websites, magazines, radio, they all go into end of year content. So they're only writing about what's happened in 2020 in the last year. So you're not going to, it's harder and harder to get coverage. You might as well just hold it all and get ready for, second week in January when kind of people are fresh and let's go again,
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Another breather.
Get yourself a breather. Yeah. Take Graham's advice. It works for me, and it'll work for you too. Track source. I noticed the record that we just put out, depending on when you're listening to this, it might not be that we just put it out, but early March, New Brunswick by myself and Leo went out, and we got a lot of support on track source. So I'm actually just curious, was that strategic? Is there some special connections that Data Transmission has there? Did we just make a really good record? I've released with maybe 7 or 8 different labels now. And I noticed in particular with you guys, which by the way was a really easy experience. So if you are an artist looking to send demos anywhere, I think anything that Graham's connected to, they not only were they like easy to work with on the front end, but they actually had deliverables that as an artist you could use on the back end. And you could just tell, you can tell when someone cares about your release versus someone not. It's like plain and simple. So I felt as though Data Transmission really cared. And then I was also like, man, they did a really good job doing something, promoting this record compared to some other ones that I've put out. So talk to us about like what I'm saying, the track source connection and everything in between.
Yeah. So depending on the size of your label, like for us, the DT Weapons label is a label we're kind of growing artists and we're working with newer artists. So for us, the size of the label is, it's a point where we split our strategies. On them, we have the main label, which is called Data Transmission, and that goes on Beatport exclusive, and we use Beatport Hype, and we try to get some support for the main label on Beatport, and then we have DT Weapons, and we push all of the exclusive to TrackSource and give them all the love. We have from kind of myself going to things like IMS and ADE, I've really good connections with Traxsource. I've been good friends with them for a long time. So that when we we've met up, we've had drinks, we've kind of hung out, we've done a lot of support for them. We support them across all of our channels from a data transmission point of view. Like we've done features on them, we've covered them. So when it comes to our labels and we're going, right, guys, we're really, going to support you with this label. We're going to push all of our support and all of the promotion for this label to Traxsource. And it works really well for, like, if you're a smaller label and you're a newer label, the Traxsource community is such a great community. If you're a house music for disco and the labels that work on those, it really, really works. Like our new disco label is going to be focused for Traxsource because there's such a good disco community. You find a lot of good, newer artists, smaller artists, different. It's also the variety of music on there. I always find like Beatport is like the bangers, and like you go into the chart and it's literally the biggest labels, the biggest promotion. And if you're a DJ that wants different music and you want to, a wider range of music, and you're playing house music or disco or tech house, those sort of sounds, going on Traxsource, you're going to find a load of music you're just not going to find in the charts on Beatport. And for us, splitting the strategies for 2 labels, or for the 5 labels, like for our drum and bass label, we focus on Juno, because Juno has a great drum and bass scene, and we focus all of our R&D on Juno, and we try to get as much love from that platform in there. So for us, it's about using what works on the platform, our connections with the platforms, but also really like driving all of our attention from a marketing point of view to that platform so we're showing them love and they show us love, and it's kind of reciprocal,
Absolutely. And you talked about networking there. We've talked about different angles of marketing, which if you haven't by now, guys, gone and looked up Grahame, look him up on Instagram. You can see his name there, Grahame Farmer, because he's constantly just dropping. Well, not just Instagram. Sorry, that's where I follow you. But like you said, you're on all the platforms. But what I wanted to ask you is if you have any pointers from a networking and really just again a business perspective, because I think you said it earlier, a lot of what artists are doing is not realizing that the creative process is merely just a piece of this whole picture. Some of the most successful names that we know are very savvy business people, and you got to run this like a business, otherwise you're probably not going to go very far. So networking, marketing, all that, like, you talk about your relationship with Traxsource. I'm sure there's someone listening right now will be like, oh, well, if I knew Traxsource, then I could blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, like, you probably can do that. You can pull a Grahame. You can go meet the right people. So what's your wisdom there?
Yeah, I mean, all of these, like, I was speaking to somebody earlier, like, there's the International Music Summit in Ibiza. It's now maybe in its 16th year. I missed the first ever one, but I've been to 14 of them. So I've been going there 14 years. And things like ADE, my first ADE was in 2009. And I just turn up every time and try and meet as many people as possible. I go to all the networking events. I go to everywhere. And honestly, they scare the hell out of me. Like, I'm so kind of like, I'm 6'6", but I also stand in the corner going, I don't want to talk to anyone. And I
so the whole was initially or now? Because I'm sure you get approached now, but even your first few ones?
The first few ones, I literally was like, what? I don't want to. And I'm like, Grahame, stop, just get in there and say hello. Everyone's a human. Go and ask them what they like. The big ones for me is like, who are you and what do you do? I just got, like, I set my students now from my course, like, we'll meet up at these conferences, and I'm like, right, I'll go to them. I'll go, who's that guy over there? Or who's that woman over there? And I know who it is, and I know they want to know who it is, but they have no idea who it is. And I'm like, who's that person over there? Go and find out who they are. Yeah. And they're like, I'm like, just go and ask them who they are and what they do. And they'll go over there and they'll kind of like, who are you? And they'll tell them, and all of a sudden they'll come back and they'll be like, well, I just met the head booker for Defected. And I'm like,
right.
And I'm like, well, I know that, and now you know that, and you've now made a connection. Yeah. And it's that little push out your shell just to kind of like go, right, go and do it. And these things like Amsterdam Dance Fair, IMS in Ibiza, Brighton Music Conference is such a great place. If you're in the UK or in Europe, Brighton Music Conference is such a great place for new and established artists. There's loads of great people to connect with from at the same level as your peers, but also from a high levels as well. I'm hosting the social media panel. I do that. I'm doing it this year there again, and I'm really excited about it this year. I also host a breakfast there. It's really fun. Basically it's 2 hours before the conference start. It's a separate ticketed event, but you basically come and have breakfast, and you ask me loads of questions, and we kind of chat. And it's like essentially that last year we had 35 people turn up, which is, I find absolutely jokes that people want to pay to have breakfast with me, but also we get to have breakfast and sit and chat about social media and artist development, which I absolutely love. So we do that at Brimsey. And again, these places are great, but also go to clubs, go to events, go and hang out in Discords, go and hang out. Like, literally, networking is the biggest thing you can ever do. It's the biggest thing you can push your career. Like, when I started Day of Transmission, I wanted to get as many artists on the platform as possible. And I realized very quickly on that to do that, it's not about meeting the individual artists. It's about meeting their managements and their booking agents, mainly their managements. So if you went to an event and where there was an artist playing, well, who else is on their roster that you might want to meet? Who is that artist book manager? Because if you knew the artist manager, then you basically have access to 6 or 7 artists or 10 artists, depending on the size of the roster, instead of just one. And yes, it's nice to meet the artist and shake the artist's hand, but actually for me at the time, it was like, I want to work with these managements, because essentially then they'll start sending me all their artists instead of just one. And that networking was the key for me, you know?
Yeah. And to make it probably even easier to accomplish when you think about it, because of the notoriety that an artist would have, typically they're going to be harder to connect with or approach, because, people are naturally going to gravitate towards, say, for example, talking to James Hype, where in reality, the person that you want to talk to is, probably someone that no one even knows what they look like. All you got to do is ask. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Serge. It's Serge that stood next to, Serge stood a little bit away from him. And, once you meet Serge, then you know that Serge then looks after a load of other artists and he's got a massive management company, and Serge is lovely. And he'll stand there and talk to you about everything. And he'll tell you loads of stuff about being an artist. And he really, really, he gives you so much of his time. He's such a lovely man. But you're right. You're not going to get near James, because James has got a massive crowd with him. But Serge is stood just to the right. And you'll get by meeting him, you're going to actually unlock a load of stuff for yourself, which you never thought you were going to unlock.
That happened to me at the first kind of tool room party that I went to. I'd gone all these years following the label. I didn't realize that Stuart Knight existed. And I was like, oh dude, you have 300 followers on Instagram. Like, you're incredible.
Yeah.
And
you'll chat to Stuart, and then you'll learn so much. Like, you'll learn loads, because Stuart actually is in the face of running the business and running, all of the sides of running a tool room. And literally is, it's the person that's running the business. Whereas trying to get near Mark is just sometimes near impossible, because he's got lots of fans that want to talk to him.
Yeah. I love it. One thing I want to get your take on, because I know, especially being a writer, like, you've probably seen this on the blog side of things, now on the music side of things. I want to know, what's your take with the AI boom and, our industry, whether it is writing, whether it's producing. It's a double-edged sword. Stay away from it. What do you make of this AI hype going on right now?
So I wrote this book with AI.
There you go.
Do you know what? I love AI. I think of it as my assistant, and I log into it. How are you? What's new? What are your thoughts of the day? What do you think about this? I've got these. I'll write down a load of ideas and go, what do you think about these ideas? And it'll kind of feed back to me. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that. And you kind of I'll give it a script, and I'll go, I'm thinking about writing this script. I've got these ideas. Ask me some more questions to really kind of help me flesh these ideas out. And it'll ask me a load of questions, and I'll be like, that one's rubbish. I'll answer this one. I'll answer that one. And it really, really helps me with ideas and ideation. I think it's great for content for ideation, but I did a video recently about Meta AI. You can kind of, if you just take the basics, it's going to give you the basic results. If you really, really push it, you're going to get some great stuff out of it. It becomes your virtual assistant. I think for music production, I think there's a whole lot of things with music production and music, whether it's copying people, whether it's taking other people's ideas, which is, has both sides. Some is sampling, some is stealing, and again, like, but when it comes to vocals, can you use some of those AI processing to change a vocal? But then if you only use part of it and use another part from another thing, and it becomes a new thing, and it's essentially stealing like an artist again. So it's as with everything, it's how you use it. We all learned how to Google a long time ago, and we learned that as a skill. And I think the skill now is how to get the most out of AI to really, really maximize your day. As I say, I had hundreds of scripts and transcriptions from podcasts, and I said, so I basically uploaded them all to AI and said, make sense of this mess.
Yeah.
And it's basically spat me back a load of things and said, what do you think of this? And I said, well, I like that, and I like that, but I don't like any of that. Let's delete that. And then, like with my YouTube scripts, I'll give it some ideas, and then we'll go back and forth on every word, on every line, until we get to the point where I'm happy. And then I'll upload the whole thing again and go, this is what we've got so far, because I probably added some offline. Where is there a hole? I've now got prompts for myself where I've watched other videos and gone, well, I like their flow and I like this idea and I like this idea. We'll make that into a prompt so that when I want to write my own scripts, I can take that prompt and say, I want to write a script about this and I'm going to use all these points, and it's going to then start fleshing a script out for me quicker. And it kind of, once you start learning what you're about and learning your ways of saying it, really, really speeds things up for you.
Absolutely. I heard a metaphor. Or go ahead.
But yeah, it's got this. Like everything in life, it's there are goods and there's bads, and you make it work for yourself.
Yeah, the metaphor I heard once in regards to AI, kind of in general, but especially what you're saying, which I'm thinking is probably Chat GPT or Claude, something like that, which I love using as well. Is we used to use the example of someone using an axe to chop down a tree, and then someone comes by and says, hey, here's this chainsaw. Just it speeds everything up. So in regards to up and coming artists, because that's again something that data transmission has been associated with for quite some time, whether it's just you coming into contact with them naturally as the stories you shared with us, or even now with DT Weapons. It's cool, by the way. Again, I don't know how you pulled this trick, or if she just naturally found it, but that was cool that Carly Wilford played our record on was Tomorrowland. I'm getting it.
Tomorrowland Radio. Yeah.
Yeah. So she played that there, and then she gave Data Transmission a shout out. So yeah, who do you have an eye on right now as far as someone up and coming?
So firstly, yeah, it's me and Carly have been friends a long time. And we've worked together on some platforms. Like she's worked for Written Data Transmission. Like, we literally, like, she's been helping me kind of look through the book and kind of been reading through the early transcripts. And she's messaged me about gigs and kind of, I've got this problem. What do you think about it? So me and her go back a long time. And we help each other a lot. So I send her everything for that new show. I'm super proud of her. She's the first female to be on radio presenter on Tomorrowland Radio.
Oh, really? Wow.
I'm absolutely buzzing for her. Like, she's the first person that's come from another side to be a radio host, from being a presenter to now being a host and have her own show. It's a massive step forward for her. So I love what she's doing. And yeah, she really, like, Carly hustles it. Like, if you ever get to hang out with her or spend any time with her, she absolutely hustles it. She hustles for gigs.
My observation with her is just top-notch networker. I want to be.
Exactly. She networks to hell. She's got a booking agent now, but for the last couple of years, she's been running her own gigs, and she literally will message everyone and go, hey, what's going on? And just literally keep in touch with people all the time. So she's literally always in your thoughts. And she does that with hundreds of people. So that all the bookers and like, what's going on? What's new? I've just dropped this track. I've got this thing going on. What's going on with you? Like, anything new, anything like you're working on that I can be part of, and like really just hustles it and has like I was saying earlier with the 1%, like has a focus, has a where they're going to get to, and it doesn't matter that if they get a knockback, it's a knockback, and it's not a no forever. Like, I always think, like, people think that when you get a no, it's a no forever. It's not. What you've got to remember, like we were speaking about business earlier, and I don't ever want to kind of get the business to stifle the creativity, but you have got to think of it like a business, and businesses have got to align to do business together. Like, and your DJ business has to align with either their record label business or their gigs business or their promotions business or their club show promotions. And if you two don't align, then it's not a no now. It's you've got to work harder to make them align. And as for your other question, like who's kicking it for me, like we support a lot of people on the label. Like there's a kid called Bessie who's been part of my streams. Obviously, Los Seco, he's my assistant. Like I'm always going to shout him. I'm always going to shout Carly. I'm always going to like Bessie's making some great bass tech house, like really great. He's been part of my streams. There's an artist called Pattern Perception who we have a demo feedback stream on YouTube every Monday and Wednesday, literally 1:00 in the afternoon till 3. Join on my Discord, and you can submit tracks. And he submitted a track every year, literally every month last year. He was submitting a track, makes music across different genres. And on the final stream of the year at the end of 2023 even. No, 2020, what day year is it now? 24. Yeah, end of 2023. Basically, I helped him get this album signed because this label came into the chat.
Nice.
This label came into the chat. We knew we had a body of work that was really cool. And essentially, like I was like, why don't you two just chat to each other? Because I think you'll work together well. The label's got really good prestige, and they literally signed an album, and it's taken a year for that to it's going to come out this year, but they were literally working on it all last year, finishing it, and then that's going to drop this year. And one of the first track off that album, my God, it sounds like the start of a James Bond movie. Like it's like it literally like I'm getting little goosebumps now just even thinking about it. It's that good a track. Like we all listened to it on my demo stream, and we all just went, what did we listen to? What did we just listen to? It was like literally, it's epic.
Is the album out yet?
No, not yet. He's called Pattern Perception. Keep him on your radar because he's very cool. He's making some amazing music from a different tip, like from the tech house and house tip. Like always Laws, always Acid Harry, who's on our label, Carly Wilford, Shan, who's released on Touring, who's released on Data Transmission, which I absolutely love, and she's got a killer track. I've got this guy called Hawkeys who we signed off the demo stream, who made this like I really like that kind of like electro house kind of things coming back in, like. You know, the sound that was like early 2000s, I feel like that's going to have a moment again. Yeah. Like it's on its 20-year cycle now. And that kind of, I've seen like there's been some releases on Hot Tracks over the last maybe 6 to 8 months where they've had little electro tinges. So if you're thinking about kind of a sound, you're like looking at that sound and looking at what you can do with that kind of electro, because that's really bubbling along a little bit. You know, like the Afro House thing was bubbling along for 3 or 4 years before it kind of blew.
Totally.
Like I feel like the Electro House thing is kind of like bubbling along in the kind of a few tracks, and it could catch momentum, and if it kind of gets the right right music behind it, you know.
Yeah, that's a really good reminder. I'm going to intentionally pay attention to some more 2000 to like 05 records now, because you are seeing that trend. Even what comes to mind for me is a lot of 2000 to 05 American hip hop records. The vocals are being pulled from those, and everyone's kind of doing that now. I think I even have probably something in the pipeline similar to that. But yeah, Graham, thank you so much for hanging out with us here today. I learned a ton. I'm sure our listeners did too. Could you remind everyone again just where to get your book and just other things you're working on right now?
So the book will be out by the time this drops. It's called Gather, Give and Grow. It's basically your blueprint to growing on Instagram. It's literally packed with how to use it. Literally, the whole premise is you start by kind of gathering your audience. Then you're going to give them loads of content and kind of give them stuff to follow you. And then you're going to grow that audience. So literally grow your community. And then that's going to turn into all of the good stuff, like, more streams, more listeners, more gigs and everything like that. And it's got literally things how to promote, what time to post, how your strategy for posting, how every part of this platform works. And it's all kind of in one helpful book.
Boom. There you go. Guys, go check it out. We've got all that information in the show notes. So make sure you go ahead and check those out, and make sure you also give Graham and Data Transmission a follow, whatever your preferred platform is, SoundCloud, Instagram, Spotify. I'm running out of ideas, but I know there's many more. YouTube. There we go. Yeah, YouTube, because you're still doing the daily video. You said, right?
We do a weekly video on YouTube. YouTube's my biggest platform, my biggest focus on my platform. So go and follow on YouTube, go and subscribe on YouTube. We do 2 demo streams a week. We have a new video every Thursday. So if you want ears on music, me and Losek listen to demos every week. And we have a brand new video every week.
Nice. Yeah, actually, I have seen some of those live demo streams. So those are always fun to watch, guys. Make sure, to Graham's point, head over to YouTube, follow them right now. And that is all.
Me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on here and dropping bombs as you always do. Looking forward to just seeing what you guys do with the label. The disco house thing is super cool too. I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. I have a couple friends producing that style of music, which it's growing on me. I always wondered if I was going to catch the disco house bug. I'm not making any right now, but I found myself playing it for my kids mostly. I find
nice.
it's a good dad vibe is the disco house. So anyways, guys, this has been another episode of Dream Chasers, where hustle meets house. I'm your host, General Moses, and we were joined today by Grahame Farmer of Data Transmission. You can go follow him on YouTube primarily. You'll figure out everything else from there. And lastly, make sure you head to houseofhustletd.com. That is the sponsor of the show. We love you, House of Hustle. Thank you for all you're doing to take this show to the next level. And on that note, remember, in all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.